Hey everybody, it's DC20, and I was going to make a video just because I was already putting some effort into these Nagas from Reaper Bones, part of their Reaper Bones Kickstarter that I partnered with, or backed, that's the word, a long time ago. And I kind of figured that I was going to make this video for my aunt and friends just because they seemed interested. Wanted to show that archer guy. I actually lost the bit that was his arm and quiver, so I just figured on replacing it with some extra bits I had, giving you a little bit of comparison between the two. This isn't going to be a tutorial whatsoever. I need to focus on that kind of stuff here, but this is just basically showing you the Zenithal highlight, which is priming them black and then making them sprayed with white paint from above to give highlights and kind of separate the edges from the shadows. This is what we call the base layer. I'm going with a green to try and give these scales kind of an underlying kind of serpentine hue. We're actually going to be going with a rattlesnake pattern for these guys, along with one introduction of a gaboon viper. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's certainly what it looks like. So yeah, we're just getting this coat of green down, and I'll be back, after we get this done. This will mostly be a little bit of a lo-fi kind of study / meditation video, so just enjoy it while I'm painting, doing work, and the quiet takes over. I'm doing this to about 6 different miniatures. Now that I've got green based on all of them, kind of skipping ahead, I'm going with a paint called Talaran Sand to get the brown notes, kind of bringing it into the actual shade of where I would want the most control over, the most prominent, especially to replicate diamondback rattlesnakes. Big part of going for the kind of different color underneath, aside from helping to give color to shadows if I happen to miss any paint later on, it will also kind of shine through. These paints, especially if you're doing them right, are kind of semi-transparent, so the colors underneath really do have an effect on how the stuff up above them comes out and starts looking. We might get some examples on how kind of uniform too thin coats famously is for miniature painting. I'm not focusing super much on details and not getting extra paint places, mostly because the places that are overlapping, like you see those leather straps, I'm going to be going over them with a very dark paint, so you don't really have to be too afraid of getting those dirty. As I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about what colors might be good for accents or shields. We're trying to, whenever you're doing miniatures, you want a lot of contrast, or at least something to pop. You want something on these miniatures to stand out. I'm hoping that the diamondback pattern will be enough, but since the diamondback patterns are muted, I mean, the snake is meant to look, the camouflage is meant to look like rocks and other snakes, or dead leaves. It's going to be relatively subtle, and I'm going to be thinking about what I can do to make this little squad stand out more. And I apologize if you hear a little bit of woofing in the background. I don't think it's coming up, but my puppy riotous dreams. So everybody wish Birdie some sweet dreams. As I'm painting, you'll see a little bit of a crack going through the kind of lower ab/belly area of the snakes. That is a seam where two different parts glued together. There are putties that you can fill in to kind of get that to be more visible. I probably should have done it on the front because it's pretty easy to hide in big flat areas like those belly scales. But on the back ones, I was a little nervous. I didn't really want to risk creating a line in the scales that just look like, goo or plastic had been molded together. So I opted not to. You might also see some mold lines, which is where the plastic injection molds kind of come apart at the seam. A lot of times you'll file those down. I was nervous about losing definition on the scale, so I didn't do it near as much as I should have here. This project, this is part of a project, I should say, of clearing out my gray mound, the gray pile of plastic that I've yet to paint, especially since they are about to send out another Kickstarter that I backed. We're working on, being done with our old stuff, or at least have less unpainted plastic just taking up space. Alright, now we are starting down on the Diamondback pattern. I'll show a picture. Actually, the picture probably was a little bit earlier, we'll see, of a Diamondback rattlesnake and how their diamond patterns go along their spine, and start out with a brighter color on the outside, then two shades of dark brown towards the interior. These snakes were a little bit different because I had to choose to either make really big diamonds, just because they have a lot more scales, like the way that they're modeled. There's more area to their back than there normally would be on a snake. I opted to go for smaller diamonds, but more of them. So there's a point on the small of their back typically where there will be like a pair of diamonds. I think it worked pretty well. Instead of looking like a big splotch, it kind of looks like a diamond from all angles, or at least that they have a single line of diamonds from all angles. The only angles that you can see both of them are from directly on the back, and it really doesn't stand out as an issue, so I'm kind of happy with where it went. You can kind of see here, that's kind of showing you how much bigger I had to make the diamonds towards the back. And then this is a little bit of a pull, mostly from water snakes or cobras, but I also wanted to make a pattern on the top of their head that departed a little bit from the Diamondback rattlesnakes, but it's going to be pretty similar. I also wanted to bring in that Gaboon Viper that we were talking about earlier, and I knew I wanted it to be on the Priestess, but the pattern itself is simultaneously a little bit complicated for miniature work and simultaneously super simple to where I don't know if it would end up looking better than the kind of Diamondback thing that I've got going on. So what I figured is that after I paint the spots on this Priestess, I will actually make her cloak like that of a Gaboon Viper, something that is, more venomous than a rattlesnake, even if only just. Certainly more dangerous because from what I saw, it might be incomplete or old science that we don't have antivenom. So, higher tier authority, higher potency venom, and you will kind of see the kind of triangle shaped patterns and oddly enough, snake mimicry pattern on the Gaboon Viper. It's an interesting thing, but we'll let this get back to the calming music. show the step in this video because my camera corrupted the file, but in the center of each of these I'm also going to put one lighter brown splotch to kind of round out the diamondback effect I was planning on. Alright, now we're starting to see the triangles that I've got going for the Gaboon Viper. A little bit freestyle. They're not as sharp as I would necessarily like, but kind of been running out of decent brushes, or brushes with decent tips, so I'll be needing to go to the store and get some relatively soon, but I'm not super worried. By the end of this project, I was very happy with where this ended up ending. I'll actually show you guys the kind of Gaboon Viper pattern here that I was planning on kind of basing this off of. It's pretty sick for a snake, right? I shouldn't even say for a snake. Snakes always look cool. This is just a particularly cool looking one. Time to check our progress. I freaking love this pattern. It turned out to be everything that I could have possibly wanted. Alright, so now I am applying what is called a dry brush. My camera angle is really off. I'm sorry, I don't have a display monitor perfectly. But just giving some edge highlighting to those scales, really making it, you know, kind of pop. Some of it I go a little bit heavy on. I'm not super stoked on it, but at the same time, I think it ends up looking really good. I mean, look at that. That looks so freaking cool. that looks exactly like what I was imagining it popping out whenever I ended up selecting Rattlesnake for these guys. It was spot on. Now we're going to paint their underbellies. You'll actually see I end up missing the underbelly just underneath that leather strap. I ended up painting it gold just to make it look like some extended armor plating. I think it ended up looking really well. You know, just finding small ways to make up for small mistakes and not worrying about too much is really how you end up getting through the big mounds of plastic. You know, I'm not planning on sending these little guys for golden brush competitions or anything like that. These are going to be Dungeons and Dragons miniatures and maybe a stand-in for a war game, and they are going to look damn good for it. I've got the speed increased by about 500% here. I wish I was this fast. It would end up making everything I do way quicker. It would definitely make it to where these videos were not a project. They would just be part of investing the time, and it might end up still being that, but oh boy, this I've seen people paint with that speed, and look at that. I mean, that's just so crisp. You can see that kind of belly divide right at about the fourth segment up. A little bit distracting, but again, these are D&D miniatures. I'm not going to throw them on a table. They're not going to be in a competition. This is just for me. You notice I still have that one dude that has a completely white arm. I'm going to end up painting that just like the typical armor. It ends up really covering up the mistake. What I'm doing right now is I'm applying a gloss varnish to all the bodies of the snakes that I've already painted, primarily so that when I'm working on the weapons, I can easily take the miniatures off while touching their scales and not have to worry about ripping up paint. I spend a lot of time on those patterns and I really don't want to mess it up. Bonus points, this gloss actually kind of gives the model a almost organic looking shine to them. I typically try to go really matte in my paintings. I really don't like the shiny, I really don't like the satiny. Oh, this is the Gabon Viper. You can kind of see that trail up her back that looks kind of like another snake. That's just what they have. I trimmed it with copper and gold. But anyway, got that all varnished so that way I can handle the models and paint their accents without having to worry about messing them up. I'm going with a Mesoamerican jade and gold, as I said earlier. I'm going to try a couple different techniques, but both of them are going to rely very heavily on green paints. So first I'm going with Vallejo, flat green and some black, and doing what's called a wet blend, where I'm basically putting on some wet black paint and wet green paint, having them mix to kind of give them that kind of color gradient that typically comes from colored glass going from really thin to really thick. You'll kind of see I then apply the green, and then over it I apply the kind of fluorescent green that I had. I didn't really end up liking it near as much as another technique that I'll show later on. I think if I were going with this again, I would just use the flat green and then blend that instead of using the fluorescence. I've had rough luck with the fluorescent on anything that wasn't designed to be true plasma, like energy, electricity, all that stuff. I tend, whenever it's a physical object, to really end up preferring the, again, mattness of the paint, the less glossy look, which I know this is supposed to look like polished stone, so I don't mind it, but it just looks slick to me. It looks plasticky to me. You know, it doesn't look like shining stone. I go in with this one with a little bit more of that green paint to kind of flatten it out. And then later on, I will be inking the underlay. See, that looks so much better. And I wish I kind of kept it for that one instead of putting a whole bunch of other fluorescent paint. So what I'm doing right now is called an edge highlight, and I'll be doing that a little bit more with the armor, but it's really good on weapons because you're able to make them look genuinely sharp. This right here I'll be coating later on in a little bit more green to give it kind of a like natural radiance. But even if I were to just keep it like that looks so much better than if it was just a blackish green plastic lump. Like, that looks sharp. What I'm doing right now is a technique called inking, which is basically just putting a lot of really watery paint or acrylic ink into the recesses of something and then wiping it away with my finger, which leaves the paint in the recessed areas and gives it a pretty gosh darn sharp look. This side, probably not the best one. Sometimes it really depends on how well the plastic model kept the detailing, but this side ends up looking really sick with it. So this is the swords that I basically did the kind of fluorescent green highlight on. You can kind of see it looks like globby paint a little bit, even with it super thinned out, versus the other sword where I just put a little bit of that fluorescence over. That looks so much better, and I wish I had done it with all of them, but these miniatures, almost all of my miniatures are a little bit of an exercise, a little bit of a test. The fire ended up turning out really good, and I actually tried something called OBS, which is Object Source Lighting, which is when you use a technique called dry brushing, basically just removing a lot of the medium from the paint just to where you get a little bit of medium and pigment. and dusting it over the miniature to look kind of like a glow. I don't know if it was a success. I think it's a success for OBS. I also think that perhaps this model would have looked a little bit better if I had gone with a slightly different color than green, but I'm not heartbroken over it. It looks like a cultist with a little bit of proper glow coming up over her shoulders from the fireball overhead. That's a success, even if I think it might not look as good as it would have without it. It's going to be dramatic nonetheless. Alright, this is going to be another technique that I end up using for the jade weapons. So you see, I kind of did that inking trick with a lot of white in the center, with a little bit more on the uppers, but really focusing on, you can kind of see me touching it up a little bit, really focusing on the inlay and the places that I really want to be a really shiny green jade. And then I'm going to end up using what is called a contrast paint, which is basically a really thin paint in some medium that pools into the recesses and ends up looking really freaking cool. Citadel makes these contrast paints that are really good, but I tend to really like army painters a little bit more. They're speed paints. This green, though, is just gorgeous. This is going to be my jade go-to. I can tell you already. It's got that little bit of blue that really makes it look like polished deep green stone, and it's just fantastic. Absolutely phenomenal. I do one shield in this where the entire center disc is jade green with those deep dark green recesses, but then I also end up going with a portion where just the accents are green, where they're jade. I'll show you that in just a second. There will be a comprehensive thing as well as a little bit of a slideshow to show some miniatures, both from this project and I think a couple others. Taking a little bit of that pooling green away from the sun disc and putting it more again towards those recesses. I don't want a whole bunch of pooling green up around the top. I just want it in the cracks. Then I'll end up setting this miniature on its side where the sun is where the disc is facing flat up, to really make sure that all of it kind of stays where it is rather than dripping. This is a little bit still wet in those crevices, but it was dry enough to start working. I should have waited a little bit, but it was getting really late in the day, and I really wanted to finish up this project, so I finished up with that accent gold that you'll be seeing on most of the pieces of armor and weaponry here. Just getting it around the edge, not worrying about making the rivets a different color on this particular project. I just want the shield to look crisp with a good edge. And I think that this kind of coppery gold is the exact way to get about that. shield looking fantastic. I love that. And then I'm giving it a little bit of comparison with the one I did. I can't tell which one I like more. I think that me and my team just decided, yeah, we like those as a pair. Both of those are correct, but you can't have two of the same with that. Now I'm going to work on the armor, roughly the same process. I really liked what that jade did to that shield, or what that process was in making jade for that shield. So I'm going to end up doing the exact same to this, we'll call him an enforcer type. I'm just taking a little bit more of that gold and bringing all those edge highlights together. I tell you what, Reaper Bones has really busted their butts with quality of miniatures. Obviously, with some of the lower cost plastics, they still end up with a little bit of warping, but they're typically way better, especially way better than they used to be, and they were already really good for their cost. But I tell you, this right here is some of the crispest edges I've ever seen on injection mold plastics, and that includes even the $50 to $60 Games Workshop stuff. I mean, look at that. That looks so freaking cool. One of the best things about painting is finding a model that just has I've learned that edges, something with a crisp outline really does make 90% of projects look so much better with so much less work. And this is the pinnacle of that being proven. Probably could have gone a little bit more white highlight in the recesses with the jade, but I really like how this looks. And to give myself credit, his swords look pretty decent too. Now I'm just giving the eyes and lips a little bit of touching up, and we're about done. We almost got all these guys painted in a single day, and they look so freaking cool. I can't wait to take these out the next time I have physical D&D and having the party just kind of go, oh, look at the pattern. It's like there's a little bit of the ego that gets fed with stuff like that. Again, they look a little bit glossy for my taste, but I think it's going to end up working out better in their favor, especially across their backs because of them being snakes. I can probably take down their front just a shade with some anti-matte varnish. But I mean, that just looks good. And they look like their backs look like genuine living snakes. Like, that looks good. And their armor is just fantastic. A little bit of a grainy photo here, but we're going to get a little bit of a slideshow. Thank you all for watching. The music has been by, let me double check here. I do believe the name is Fazaz Studios. I'll double check that before we end up clearing out. But I just wanted to say thank you and enjoy these miniatures. Enjoy watching, and I guess see you next time.